when I was talking about Margin Master, I asked the question about how do you measure what your margin is today in your store. And people that have had Margin Master for a long time, maybe don't even know this feature is in there. But Margin Master has, I'm going to jump in here. Margin Master has a feature that's called sitting margin. And sitting margin is simply this. I'll try and make this explanation simple. If somebody came into the store today and said, hey Brad, love everything you got. I will take everything that you sold over the last 12 months. I'll take exactly those quantities that you sold. I want to buy it all right now. Full retail, no discounts, just sell it. And if they did that, that transaction at the front, they have a lot of items on it for sure, but that would have one margin related to that transaction using my current replacement cost and what was the current retail price of all those items that I sold. Okay? At full retail price, sell everything sold over the last 12 months. Now we're not including things that I didn't sell. So great, I got it in my assortment, but I never sold over the last 12 months, I don't really care. Only the things that I sold. What is that margin? And if I knew that, and I knew what that number was, okay, so to see that number, we go to the profit analyzer here, and we load this data up. In this sample data that I have, you can see the top right corner of the screen. You guys go both sides. It says sitting margins of all SKUs. So what that represents is simply selling the quantity that we sold over the last 12 months multiplied by retail, and then using the current replacement cost as our cost basis to determine what the margin is. Now why is that number cool? It's cool because it eliminates seasonality of our business. So when somebody says, well, we do a large winter business, this doesn't care because it's 12 months. So by taking that 12-month number then and looking at that number over time, which unfortunately current version of Margin Master does not track that, but we're getting ready to. If you monitor that number over time, you will see that that number will change slightly. And you will see that if it goes down 0.1%, that maybe you should start to get nervous. And the reason that you want to get nervous is because all of our other pricing is driven from this number. We're never going to achieve this number, but as we start with this pricing point, we give discounts, we give contracted discounts, promotional discounts, we have something stolen, whatever it is. As our pricing comes down, we never are going to get to that number. So some of you are going to see a high number there, some of you are going to see a low number. But the other neat thing about Margin Master is I play with what am I going to do with pricing. It fluctuates this future sitting margin. So in other words, if I change my pricing, how would that affect me? So everybody always says, well, you know, we see those numbers at the bottom of Margin Master, Brad, that tell me I'm going to make an extra $50,000. How do I know that's true? You know, and I say, well, we don't know it's true. It's an estimate. There's no doubt. I tell you, in fact, it's relatively conservative. But the reason that we know that it's very close to true is because we can look at what that margin number does. And that change in percentage equates very strongly to your sales margin on a daily basis. So in this store, if they're starting at 41.26 sitting margin, let's say they give away 3% on promotions, so they end up 38%, something like that in their daily sales reports. That's going to run, that change is going to be fairly constant throughout the year. So if I increase my top line, my sitting margin by a couple points, it's fair to say I'm still going to see the same percentage of promotional costs. Therefore, I'm going to see the bottom line profitability increase by whatever this percentage changes. Does that make sense? Not complicated math. I'm not even very good at it. Okay, so that's an important number. If I look at that number then, and I know where I am, and I said, hey, today I'm at 42% sitting margin, and I know that last year I put 1% to the bottom line, and I want to improve my bottom line profitability from 1% to 3%. Guess what I need to do to that number? I need to pick it up 2%, roughly. Okay, 2% isn't 100% going to be 2%, but it's going to be darn close. If I made 18% last year and I made too much and I want to make less, I could lower that number. I've seen that before too. Someone says, I made too much money. You guys believe anything I tell you? Nobody's ever made too much money. Maybe. Okay, so is everybody get sitting margin? So if you've got Margin Master today and you haven't looked at that number before, the first thing I want you to do when you get back to the store, open up Margin Master. Even if you haven't done it in a long time, refresh your data. If you need help, have the support desk help you. Get your data in there. Find out what that sitting margin number is. And just get yourself a benchmark. Okay, there's no work involved in that other than loading the data. Once you know that number, at least once a month, come back and check that number. Because what you're going to see is if you're doing nothing, you're going to see that number change. Probably going to see it shrink. And it's not necessarily just somebody doing something evil. Yes?
How close will that number be to a year-to-date figure or last year's business budget?
The question is, how close will that number be to a business advisor number? And the answer is this. It's not even close to a business advisor. But let's say that it's off by 5%. What we care about is the correlation between the two. Because again, this doesn't reflect promotions. It doesn't reflect dead stuff. It doesn't reflect maybe some other things that you're hitting in your cost of goods. But that number and the difference between the two, so if it's 5% difference this year, next year, it's going to be very close to 5. It might be 4.99, but it'll be about the same. Now, if you change this, if this increases, now you would expect that the profit number to come along with it. Does that make sense? So, if you do nothing more, check this number once a month, write it down. And if you don't want to do margin mastering, you're watching your margin decline, hopefully that will motivate you to pick up the phone and call our support team and kind of help you figure out why your margins are going down. Okay? I started to say the margins are going down not because you're doing something necessarily wrong or somebody's pushing evil buttons and they're wishing to put the hex on you. It's simply because over time, costs go up a little bit. Retails tend to stay a little bit flat. And if you haven't maintained your retails, we all have that perpetual inbox of pin tags that we're waiting to put out. If you haven't done those all, if you're not always on top of those, potentially your pricing is lagging behind. And as you lag behind, your margin shrinks. It has to. It has to. Because how many prices have gone down in the last little while? Not most. Most prices are going up. Hillary could probably give us some quantifiable numbers of how many actually go up and down, but I don't want to put on small. It's not important. What's important is that over time, generally prices are going up, and generally we should be lifting our prices to match them. And if you're not, your margins are shrinking. Simple.